So my name is Christian Mendoza. I was born in San Luis Potosí, Mexico. I grew up with my parents, and at the time I had two younger siblings. My dad, he was a police officer in the narcotics and gang unit, and my mom, she worked at a fabric along with my grandma. At the age of 7, due to the poverty going on, a lot of the cartel, a lot of violence, my family decided to move to the United States. So we came to the United States when I was 7. I left first grade. It was a private Catholic church. Came here with a visa. I think it was a tourist visa. I can really recall, and it was just my mom. She was like, "Hey, you know, they're gonna ask you these questions. Tell them that you're gonna be coming here to visit." And we had family here. My dad had some family here, so we came and we ended up staying. I enrolled in a school in North Austin. That's where I grew up. It was at Woodridge Elementary. It was a culture shock, first of all, because it was the first time in the United States. I was enrolled in a classroom where everybody spoke English, so it was really uncomfortable getting to know and building rapport with people because I did not know the language. But quickly, in about 2-3 years, they put me in a bilingual classroom where I was able to learn English. I became friends with a lot of people, quickly made some friends there. There was still a challenge of adjusting to the culture here and the language. But by middle school, it was Vernon Middle School in North Austin. I felt that I was a little bit more comfortable with my English, getting enrolled in more English-only classes. 3 years later, went to high school, linear high school. I was involved in almost a lot of extracurricular activities, marching band, PALs, NHS. By then, I was a little bit more comfortable with myself, with, I guess, the community in general, and I definitely felt more American. Because again, I left when I was 7. I can barely recall parts of Mexico where I was born. By high school, it was a lot more like, hey, like I love doing this. I love, quote unquote, being American. I wanted to become a police officer. And I remember I joined the police department as a volunteer with the homicide unit. I was helping them for about 4 years, along with the sex crimes unit. It was a lot of fun. As you can imagine, seeing a lot of, I would call it fun, but it was super interesting to investigate murders and suicide and accidental deaths and the costs and putting people in the criminal justice system to bring them to justice. During that time, I became involved with the Austin Police Explorer program. It's a program for students interested in becoming a police officer. They learn what every police officer learns, the penal code, traffic law. They do a lot of hands-on training. They compete at local, state, and national level, along with those other explorers across the nation. It was a completely free program. I loved, to this day, I'm an advisor now for the past 2 years, but ever since, it was probably the funnest experience of my life. I remember in 2012, when President Obama came into town, part of the Explore program was to help the Secret Service protect the president. It was actually Bill Clinton first, and then it was Obama. And I remember the Secret Service telling me, like, hey, your job is to protect the backup of the backup of the backup Secret Service car. And to me, I was like, wow, that was the coolest thing. I didn't even know that the Secret Service had a backup with the backup with the backup Secret Service car. Not even the president, that was the Secret Service car. Sure enough, I was there downtown, keeping an eye on this car. It looked just like an ordinary car. And there was that. Shortly after, I went to Washington, D.C. to work with the Secret Service. The protective detail, the Secret Service has a uniform division. They protect the White House. It's like a regular police officer uniform. And they have to protect the detail, they protect the president, important dignitaries that come to town. I was there for about a week. I was selected across the U.S. with the other 50 students to participate in it. And I mean, I was just like, this is what I want to do. I want to become a police officer, eventually a homicide detective, or go to the federal level and join the Secret Service. I remember speaking to the chief of police, former chief Acevedo, who's currently in Houston right now. I'm like, hey chief, I want to become a police officer. I love what I do. Helping the homicide unit, sex crimes unit. I want to join. And he told me, like, hey, it's to the requirements. I remember reading the list, and it was being a U.S. citizen. And that is when it kind of hit me like, whoa, like, that's the only thing that I'm missing, He told me, like, first of all, you need to go to college. At the time, you needed a 4-year degree. Now they get rid of that requirement. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I plan on enrolling at UT Austin. I'm going to go for criminal justice. He was like, well, do not do criminal justice. Do something else you have the passion for, because in case something happens or you retire or you want to fall back on a second plan, you want to pursue a career that you have the passion for as well, which was teaching. But the major requirement is being a U.S. citizen. So I remember going home and I was like, hey Mom, like Dad, like that's what I want to do. That's when they kind of broke it down a little bit more, like, hey, unfortunately, you cannot become a U.S. citizen because of your visa and your status. So it was, I don't think it hit me at that moment. I was just like, okay, we'll fix it. But then I remember talking to a lawyer. They were like, hey, like the reality is that to become a U.S. citizen, you have to go back and come back, the right way and apply, which will probably take about 18 to 20 years. And I was like, well, that's not going to happen because, again, I don't feel comfortable going to a place that I don't call home anymore. And, I already have, school here. I plan on going to UT. I've been enrolled, accepted. So that was out the window. And I think the other one was a family member could petition you in order to become a U.S. citizen, but the only person who was a U.S. citizen was my little brother. He was born in 2006 here in Austin. Well, at the time, I believe he was 6 years old or so. He had to be 18 in order for him to petition family members. So that's gonna take 10 plus years plus the process, which is another 10 years. So that's out the window. So I kept kind of looking for different loopholes. I was like, hey, you can join the military and you can get your citizenship that way. I talked to a recruiter who said, well, you need to be a U.S. resident, at least. Well, I don't have that either. So that went out the window. And I remember just kind of praying. And I was like, God, like, this is what I want to do. My dad was a police officer. I've done so many hours with the police department. Like, I feel like this is my calling. And to this day, I still can't join the police department. I still volunteer with them. And, I continue to ask God, like, hey, show me, I'm ultimately, I'm trying to do this for you. You have a plan for me. You know what you want me to do. Use me. Use the talents and gifts that you have given me to do it for you and not for my own purpose. And to this day, I kind of feel that whether I become a police officer or not, I do appreciate the opportunity to join the police department and volunteer and make change in the community like that. And just recently, I remember speaking to a friend, and they asked me, like, well, what if, I guess going back, I remember I went through the DACA process. That's how I got my job, my driver's license, and Social Security. And they asked me, well, like, what are you gonna do when, if the president decides to get rid of it completely, or you lose that status? And it is scary knowing that, hey, my job can be done in a second. I can lose my driver's license, which that also means that as of right now, I volunteer. I translate for officers. Anytime they want a Spanish speaker out on scene, whether it's DWI, domestic violence, an assault, a robbery, I go out and translate for them. Which that would mean not being able to drive a city vehicle because I would no longer have a valid driver's license, or a job, which I'm currently an educator for AISD, the Austin Independent School District. There goes that. But at the same time, I kind of have faith and hope that God is going to continue to use me regardless of whatever happens. Whether I lose that status or not, I have faith that everything's going to work out. But at the same time, while I can, it's trying to get my story out to the government and speak for other people who might not be able to share their story and say, like, hey, we have so many people here who came at a young age who they call this place home, you know, who have a job, who are surgeons, lawyers, doctors, who are not necessarily U.S. citizens, but they are American, they're contributing to the economy, they're paying their taxes. Why not create a simpler path for them? You know, every 2 years they're renewing their work permit, they're paying about $500 to get that permit. Why not have them, you know, either pay a high penalty or fee and have them go through the same citizenship classes that everybody else takes? You know, these are people who they're staying out of trouble, not committing any Class A misdemeanors, no felonies. Why not just take that simple step and being like, hey, these people, they're positive people. It just doesn't make sense. And, you know, it's something that I also struggle with, you know, that they trust me to protect the President of the United States. They trust me to, you know, see sensitive information, you know, murders, active investigations, but they don't trust me to be a U.S. citizen. You know, it's kind of, it just doesn't make sense, you know. I'm willing to, you know, join the military and fight for what I call my home, my country, but even then they're saying no. So it's a big struggle, you know, and it's just a matter of getting my story out and being like, hey, I'm not the only one. There's about close to 1 million other people who are in the same situation, who, you know, all they want to do is be a U.S. citizen and feel completely safe and confident that, hey, if I get stopped by immigration, you know, I'm not going to be sent back to wherever I came from, whether it's Mexico, Africa, or Asia. And they just feel completely safe knowing that, hey, you know, I never have to worry about paying another $500 to renew my work permit, or be afraid that, hey, my family might also be deported and we're going to be split. So overall, you know, it's just facing this discrimination, what I feel that is, you know, you feel like you're being used, you know, to, you know, have a job and so on, and you're helping the economy, but in a minute they can just be like, you know what, screw it, you know, go back to where you came from, thank you for helping us out, that's it. So I mean, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a big struggle.
Yes. This is a really rich story. So if you don't mind, if we can unpack all these different things that you just mentioned. So would you mind talking about your experience moving when you were 7? How was it? How was your transition into this country at such an early age? And your family dynamics and all that you experienced, you know, first moving to the United States?
For me, first of all, learning the English language was really important, especially because of school. And just like I was taught, and I got a bilingual education degree at UT Austin, and just like they teach us, you know, that somebody who's younger, it's easier for them to learn a different language. So at the age of 7, you know, I felt like I was at a good age to be able to learn the second language, which was English. Aside from that, you know, my parents, it was extremely difficult for them because they couldn't get a job, first of all, except the status. My little brother, he was younger, same thing with my little sister. You know, they were starting pre-K, so for them it was just like they're barely starting school here in the United States. For me, aside from the language, like I said, it took about 2 to 3 years for me to learn. That included being involved in what we call a dual language program, learning English and Spanish at the same time, making friends who were bilingual and asking them like, hey, you know, can you teach me a few words in English? There was that. But aside from that, you know, I grew up in a neighborhood that was predominantly Hispanic. So that helped a lot, knowing that, you know, there was La Hacienda or the carniceria down the street compared to a place that it was completely just random and not relevant to my culture. So that definitely helped a lot.
So it wasn't like a completely unknown situation?
Not necessarily, you know, it did hit me that it was like a new culture.
Yeah.
Know, a lot of people who speak English, everything's in English, and how people look, how people interact, the laws, you know, compared to the laws in Mexico. That was probably the major shock. But like I said, you know, kind of growing up in a neighborhood that was predominantly Hispanic, that helped ease, you know, the second language acquisition and, you know, getting adjusted to the culture.
How were your family dynamics during that time? Like your parents and your siblings and, Because you talk about him, so how was
Yeah.
a transition for everyone as a whole?
As a whole, I feel like we were a close family who, we helped each other. I was with my little siblings, taking care of them while, I guess after my parents found jobs, my dad was a construction worker. It was a matter of taking care of them. That way they wouldn't have to, leave us with a babysitter. I think I was young, probably like 10 or 11, staying home to take care of them, which, it wasn't a major, how can I say it? It wasn't as scary as I thought, because my mom did the same thing to her other siblings. At a young age, she was cooking at such an early age, while her mom or my grandma went to the fabric. So to us was like, okay, well, you did it, I can also do it for my siblings while y'all go out and work. So we were supportive of each other, understanding my parents' situation. We're living in a small apartment, knowing that, hey, we're in a new place. I'm not looking for a nice house like we had back in Mexico. I understand the situation, and my siblings did as well. All throughout my schooling here, my mom paid for all my college. Having 2 jobs, 3 jobs to help pay for it. So it kind of shows you the support that we have for each other, and my parents were willing to, get 3 jobs, and so I could focus on school and, be able to get my degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And your process from elementary school to middle school to high school, how were those years in terms of, being in such a, because you said you lived in North Austin, right? So in being in such a multicultural city such as Austin, how were those years in your perspective?
Like I said, by 6th grade I felt a little bit more comfortable with my English and my schooling. Quickly, I started joining clubs and organizations at school, like band, especially in middle school, and sports. They helped a lot too, because I was able to kind of take advantage of the opportunities that the schooling here had, like after school clubs and so on. By high school, it was just like, that's when I felt completely comfortable that, hey, this is officially my home. Like, I have a home that I can go down, after school. My parents, they have jobs. My siblings, they go to school here. They know English now. So by high school, it's a lot more, what we call official. Like, what, like now a Texan, or an American. Like I said, learning later on, getting older, learning about the whole system and our immigration status. That was like a big, like a new shock, if you call it like that.
Right, because it sounds like you were developing this identity throughout those years, right?
Right.
That you were part of this country, that this was your new home.
Right.
Right, so you were becoming familiar and really part of this culture.
Right.
Right. So was there any tension between, maybe people that you knew, friends, family back in Mexico about, this identity that was developing? Or like personally, any tension?
No, I wouldn't say any tension at all. I grew up went to school, same thing, that was predominantly Hispanic. I had some people who were in the same situation as me. Other people who felt that, they were born here, so they had a little bit more privilege. But, me coming from a family that, went to church and more faith-based, I was like, what, like, it was meant to be, you were born here, you were meant to be born here in Austin, Houston, Dallas. You were not, you were not, and I feel like God has a purpose for everyone. And for me, I feel like that my faith kind of helped take some anger, or ease some of the anger and frustration with people who felt that they had more privilege than I did, or go to the store and immediately speaking Spanish to you, or saying like, hey, I remember clearly one time my brother, we went to a store at the mall, and the lady said, hey, the sale rack's in the back. And I guess for me, I kind of took it like, wow, instead of saying like, hey, we have this new, clothing that we have here, but also we have the sale in the back. I feel more a little discriminated, saying immediately that, hey, like, this Starbucks in the back and being followed throughout the store while we were there. So, it's just knowing that, hey, God, please give me patience, give me the strength to understand people and not have so much, hatred to people who view us as, not privileged, below everyone else.
Right. So what was your call as a person to join the police? What was the motive? Because it is developing of identity, but also, I guess, honoring what your father did.
Right.
So how did that translate into wanting to be a police person?
Ever since I was little, just like any little kid, like, hey, my dad would come home with a police car and the baton and the gun, and it was like, whoa, like, you sit in the car and turn the lights on. This is what I want to do, chase. At that time, it was like chase bad people, put them in jail. But then as I grew older, I started to see a lot of discrimination against Hispanic people, against Black people, and I felt that, like, I want to make some change. I want to be able to become an Hispanic officer who's bilingual, and being able to help build the trust between law enforcement and the minority community. That was my main goal. So I was like, if I can become a police officer yet, at least I want to volunteer. And that's why I became involved with the police department, wanting to make a change. And being a minority, saying like, hey, if I can do this, you who's also undocumented, you can also do this. And again, it ties back to, the battle that I had between me and God. Like, say, like, hey, if I don't become a police officer, maybe you want me to share my testimony. Maybe you put me in this situation so other people who feel like, well, I'm undocumented, I can't do anything. Like, no, you can also join this. Maybe you cannot become a police officer, maybe you cannot, reach that main goal, but at least you can, make some change within as a volunteer. So,
before having this clash with knowing that you cannot do this anymore because you're not a citizen. Before coming to this realization, do you encounter any circumstances before that point, such as, racism or like encounters with people that, like you were explaining, at the store, but that were targeted against you? Do you happen to see any of those things?
Not necessarily. It's just seeing, police officers treating other people differently, or immediately thinking that, hey, they don't speak English, they're probably not from here, and a lot more tough, and starting to view everyone, in such a negative way. And it was just, I think, wanting to make that change, that, hey, not every single officer is going to be like that. First of all, because of my dad, like, I'm sure he was willing to die for an innocent person, or even for a suspect, just getting out there, getting in the line of fire. For me, it's the same way, like, I can be undocumented or whatnot, same thing, like, join the military, I'm willing to give my own life or fight for our country, fight for our community, regardless of my situation, So, I'm not sure if that answered the question or not.
No, that's great. So, as you continue with this, this clash of what you can and cannot do, fulfilling your goal, your vocation, because it sounds like this is your vocation, this is what you're called to do. What are some of the things that you're struggling with right now? You mentioned some anger, you mentioned some frustration.
Right.
So how are you coping with all these things?
Just having positive coping mechanisms, like prayer, just going out for a run, and just not seeing, my situation as like, well, like, this is it, I'm gonna stop. Like, no, you keep going until God leads you a different direction. For me, it's becoming a volunteer until I can no longer do it, if that is the situation. But just having a positive perspective on life. Even though, like, for me, I remember one time I got stopped. I was driving my desk truck. It was a construction truck. I was gonna go to the ATM, and me knowing the policy that the police department has here and the procedures that, that goes with a traffic stop, I remember I was on the left lane. There was a police officer on the right lane, and he quickly got behind me, which, nothing wrong with that. But he surely turned his lights on, his sirens on. Well, every citizen is supposed to, pull to the side and let that emergency vehicle go through. So that's what I did. Well, that officer, I put in the right lane. He pulled right behind me, and I'm like, well, maybe he's trying to pull into the shopping center. So I pulled into the shopping center, and same thing, he pulled in. But to me, it was super weird, because I know that a police officer is not supposed to turn their sirens on. It's your lights, pull over unless you're failing to stop. Then I can understand the reason for turning your sirens on. Pull over, the officer was like, hey, the reason I stopped you was because you have no lights on your driver's license. Spot, you're supposed to have a light. I'm like, well, I'm really sorry. This is not my vehicle. This is my desk truck. I just came to the ATM. I live down the street. You're like, well, do you have insurance? I'm like, I do not know. I'm sure my dad probably has insurance. Okay, I'll go check. Well, while he went outside, I remember seeing another officer, which here in Austin, you're supposed to have another officer back you up, coming in with lights and siren. And I was like, this is really fishy, Like, I know that in an ordinary traffic stop, this wouldn't happen unless it's like something urgent, like you're about to get a felony traffic stop on a vehicle that's stolen or somebody in the vehicle is wanted. But I was like, you know what, it's whatever. I remember the officer coming over to me and be like, hey, how are you? And I told him I'm good. So I asked some follow-up questions like, hey, do you work in Edwards sector, or that's more like the sectors that officers patrol? He said, yeah, I do. Like, how do you know so much? I'm like, well, I'm a volunteer with the Austin Police Department. He's like, okay, and then left. That officer completely left. He didn't stay by me like any other traffic stop where there's the officers in the back running your license plate, whatever. There's an officer to your right or to your left, kind of keeping an eye on the vehicle. So the officer said like, well, you don't have your driver's license with you. You're telling me you do, but you don't. But I'm going to give you a ticket for failure to display your driver's license. But if you do have it, go to the court and they'll dismiss it. I'm like, cool with me. I know I have my driver's license, I just don't have it with me. So I went to the court. I got home, first of all. I got home and I was like, let me check the lights. And sure enough, there was a light in the license plate. So I was like, huh. Like, I wonder why he said no lights in the vehicle. And when I read the ticket, there was nothing written on the offense. On the offense supposed to be, running a red light, no driver's license, whatever. There was nothing. Reason for stop, no lights on the driver's license plate, but on the offense name, there was nothing. And I was like, whoa. But he told me he was going to give me a ticket for not having my driver's license physically with me. I'm like, okay, I'll go to the court. Went to the court, sure enough, the lady behind the counter was like, what are you trying to do? Well, I'm trying to show you my driver's license, that's what I got a ticket for. She said, well, the ticket doesn't say anything. Doesn't really say what you're getting the ticket for. I'm like, I don't know, I'm just telling you what happened. Well, let me look it up to the computer. And I guess according to the officer's report, it did say that they gave me a ticket for no insurance. So I'm like, okay, well, here's the insurance for the truck either way. So that got dismissed. And just going back to that, I was like, it kind of doesn't make sense, like, was this more like racial profiling that, maybe it's a construction vehicle, maybe this person will have driver's license or whatnot. And then the urgency for two officers to quickly, turn sirens and get there quickly, it just didn't fit, to an ordinary traffic stop. So to this day, it's just looking at that and you're like, whoa, like, I still want to become a police officer, and I think that's why, I feel like, especially with the law that they just passed here in Texas and Austin, that an officer could possibly potentially ask you for your status. I feel that a lot of people are more scared to drive. A lot more minorities and Latin people are scared to report a crime because they know that, hey, they might ask me, what my status is, and I get deported. And for me, I feel like, God, like, if you want me to be involved in the police department, use me, help me teach the community, help them educate them on the actual law and what it all entails. He's trying to make some change within, because I feel that a lot of people are scared because of my situation, had it been my mom, my dad, they would have been terrified completely. But me knowing some of the policies within the police department, it kind of helps understand and be like, whoa, like this was not reasonable, this was not proper, this was not right, and just speaking out.
Have you ever encountered any situations while working with the police department that they excluded you from doing something, given your your nationality, given who you are, or any specific like issues with that participating fully?
No, it's there for jobs. I wanted to become a 911 dispatcher, 911 call taker, but no, because of the law that called TCL, that is their main organization, they wouldn't allow me. So it's just that obstacle, and I remember one time I applied for a job, got the job as a community liaison, where they teach community about preventing burglaries and home burglaries and auto thefts. And I got hired. I was like, this is exciting, my first official job at the police department. And at the time, I did not have my work permit card. Well, Human Resources was like, well, you don't have it. Unfortunately, we cannot let you hire. I'm like, well, you can check online. I can print you an email that says, it's active for the following 2 years. I'm good to go. It's an easy call to Homeland Security. Hey, can you approve or confirm that this person is authorized to work? They didn't let me, so I was kind of let go of that position. Aside from that, it's just that, but I personally never had someone being like, well, do this, you shouldn't be part of this conversation. Me personally, no. Aside from the jobs that require a lot more strict with having that work authorization permit.
What about your family? How are they now? Given this, how things are with politics and, like the fear that you were expressing, how does your family feel?
It is scary, knowing that, hey, they can both get deported because they're the only ones that are not protected under some sort of program like DACA. It's scary for them, but at the same time, having that faith-based relationship, that we get deported, we're comfortable knowing that y'all can stay here. We did what we could to raise y'all and grow up here in Austin. And, we have our parents over there, at least we can go to them, because they spent more time in Mexico than we did. But at the same time, knowing that there's a possibility of separation, and growing up together as a close family can quickly end that. So it is scary, but at the same time, they have hope and optimism that, things are going to work out.
So what is your hope, given your story, given where you are, and, becoming a police officer, being like your vocation? So what is your hope?
My hope is that they're going to find a solution, not just for me, but for the other thousands of people who are in the same situation as me, that they're finally going to make what we call fix the immigration system and allow all these people who are really wanting to make a change, a positive change in the United States, let them become U.S. citizens through an easy or a smooth path to citizenship. But that is my hope, and I hope that once that becomes available, that I can apply. If I get in, great. If I don't, then at least I'm glad that there's changes being made that are going to affect thousands of people, not necessarily just me.